Recapping Oregon's 34-20 loss up in the Palouse, Rob Moseley, Joey Mac. I think that there's a lot to talk about in this game. Didn't go the way that the Ducks would like, but certainly a tale of two halves, no doubt.
No doubt. We don't want to dwell on that first half because it was not certainly not something anybody wants to rehash. No excuses at all because all of the different circumstances the Ducks faced could have been overcome. That said, I think in hindsight, adjusting to the loss of Penei Sewell on the offensive line, defending that air raid offense that's so funky, the emotions of the Washington State crowd with game day in town, and then Oregon coming off the emotional UW win. I think that just all those circumstances converged, and the Cougars landed the first couple of blows, and the Ducks were really knocked back on their feet, and it really took until halftime to stabilize themselves.
It really seemed like that opening drive sort of set the Ducks back for at least a couple drives. I know they had to change cadences a couple times.
Right.
That seemed to just really get the Ducks off on the wrong foot.
I reflected back on the coin toss. Washington State wins the coin toss, and the vigor with which they said, "We want the ball," was like, ooh, these guys are fired up and ready to go. Just the motion, the aggressive motion. We want the ball, we'll take it. And then the long kickoff return just really fueled that crowd. Oregon's offense obviously couldn't get going in that first half. It was again one I think everybody on the Oregon side wanted to flush pretty quickly. The good news is Ducks did that.
They did, and especially you look at the comparison in the second half. So it's a 27-0 score at halftime. The Cougars outgained the Ducks 295-39.
Yeah.
Take the second half though. Oregon won the second half 20-7 and outgained the Cougars 289-105. And if it's not for, in my opinion, a jump ball that Javon Holland actually had his hands on before the receiver did, it could be a very different story.
Yeah, the game was decided in the first half. That's why Oregon lost, because of the way the first half went. And you have to think that if Dylan Mitchell hauls in that Hail Mary at the end of the first half, and then Javon Holland wins that 50-50 ball late in the game, Oregon maybe has 5 minutes to drive to a game-winning field goal or touchdown. That shows the competitive spirit, I think, of this team. And Shane Lemieux made the comment, "Hey, last year we would have lost by 50." I think last year's team had some fight to it. But maybe a couple years ago, it could have really gotten sideways. But that showed how much these guys stayed in it and fought to the end, and that was impressive. Because all you can do in any case, whether it's a big win like Washington or coming off this loss, is just move ahead to the next step. So coming off that surge, at the end, and then in the second half of that Cougar game, at least it's something to try to build on and say, hey, that's who we want to be.
We continue to talk about Dylan Mitchell. The numbers aren't as gaudy as they have been in weeks past, but boy, did he try and take over that game. And he did take over that game at times in the second half.
He did. There was a deep ball early in the game when Oregon was really trying to get the offense going, where Herbert overthrew him just a tad. And we've seen that from Justin. When he's really amped up, he can overthrow some guys. And, Marcus Mariota was the same way. I think, any quarterback, when they really get too energized, can overthrow a little bit. That's a ball, too, where you wonder, hey, if that pass is completed, heck, maybe it's a touchdown. But if nothing else, it kind of sparks things. Mitchell's ability to get open is just really something. Just the way he reads the secondary, picks his spots, finds open spaces, has the connection with Herbert is really something. Because again, he doesn't have blazing speed. He's not doing kind of like the Keenan Howry, Darren Carrington making crazy one-handed catches, going up and over guys. But he's getting it done.
He could do that though. There's no
the ability's there, but he's not having to, because he gets himself open. It's uncanny.
Justin Herbert, again, we got to talk about him because he was 25 for 44, 270 yards and a touchdown. I felt like, again, Rob, it was a situation where he never tried to really force anything. Yeah. It was similar to the Washington game, where he just kind of gave what the defense gave him, didn't do too much, but as you said, maybe a tad bit overamped at times.
Yeah, and he had too late, obviously, and so we saw some passes thrown into coverage, and a couple balls at the end that could have been intercepted. But it's just like some of his interceptions earlier in the year, where you're really trying to force it. To end the Stanford game, for instance, you just got to try to force it downfield. But early on, it's hard to point your finger at just one thing to explain that first half, because it really did feel like kind of just a perfect storm of circumstances that were working against the Ducks. And again, just you got to move forward.
Oregon dropping a bit in the AP poll, and it's another road test for the Ducks. And I think now the question becomes, how do they learn from this, as Rob alluded to, and how do they match up with that Arizona team?
Yeah, you got to bounce back quickly. Arizona's got a lot of question marks right now. Khalil Tate has been banged up, and he's obviously such a weapon for them. Oregon was able to contain him last year, though. So what kind of X factor he could be, we'll see. It's just, we're really kind of in a wait-and-see mode, I think, with this Oregon team. There's still a ton on the table, but you do have to bounce back from this. And they bounced back so emphatically from the loss to Stanford going on the road. You think they can do it. I was reflecting back to early in the season when Mario Cristobal said, hey, we don't want this to be a transition year. We don't want this to be your typical kind of first-year head coach with some growing pains. Unfortunately, that's reality. There's a reason that's sort of a trope and a cliche, and the Ducks are dealing with some of that. I think 2-3 years down the line, you expect him to finish that Stanford game off. You expect him to deal with the atmosphere in Pullman a little bit better. Right now, although all you can do is try to look forward, go on the road, be competitive against this Arizona team, and try to get back on a winning track.
Ducks are 5-2 and 2-2 in conference and getting ready for the Wildcats. That's a 7:30 kickoff